I want to talk a little bit about the state aid reductions. I want to talk a little bit about the state aid reductions as we know it today. We know that there is a multi-year issue on our hands. That's what's coming down from the state. We know that they're talking about a 20% reduction of all state aids at this point. We haven't heard that that's in fact what it's going to end at or be at for Skodak specifically. We do know that we have had some aids that have come in without the 20% cut. So if you remember back in the summer, we saw the first checks coming in from last spring with a 20% reduction. Aids that came in September, which were lottery aid and video lottery terminal aids, did not have that 20% reduction. Remember last month I talked about our TRS payment not having a 20% reduction either. These are aids that are legislatively mandated to be paid in full. So we don't know what the next set of aids will look like. We also heard that the federal stimulus package has probably stopped, conversations on that has stopped until after the election. As early as yesterday, as late as yesterday, rather, the Questar 3 state aid planners talking to New York State financial planners think now that we will not know about the stimulus package until potentially January. So that would have a direct impact on what our aid cuts look like for this year. Federal grants have not been approved this year. We have not heard that they'll be reduced, but we also have not heard that they've been approved. Again, we don't know from my colleagues in state aid planning at Questar 3, we don't know if this is a cash issue with the state, they're just not releasing it, or if there's in fact going to be something taken back from those. These would be our preschool grants, our professional development grants, and our special ed grants, as well as our pandemic adjustment grants, which are also federal grants that were put in last year to the tune of $43,500 for Skodak. Something we need to deal with next year as well is that we have not been told that this pandemic adjustment will continue. So this would be above and beyond anything that is cut from here forward. Although it's not it's still almost $50,000 more that we'll have to deal with. So we have not heard if that'll continue to be provided back to us or not. Go to the next slide. Next slide repeats the 20% reduction from last month that you saw. Just to put in frame, it's about $1,900,000 that we're dealing with if we in fact see a 20% reduction of all aids, and it's broken down by category or by aid there. So the balanced budget, right? This tug of war, revenue versus expenses. We get our revenue basically from state aid and local taxes. Our expenses are the local wants and needs versus our federal and state requirements. When they become out of balance, we have two ways to deal with that. We can either put more revenue in, which comes from reserves or fund balance, or we can have program reductions, which lower the expenses. And that's really what tonight's to talk about. It's to talk about if we take what we have, split it by 3, the worst case scenario, where we get into the 4th year. It is in no way a recommendation. This is where we go or how we go about it. It's to start the conversation in a very uncertain time with a lot of unknowns. It's to paint the picture of what ultimately we have to use, and then the conversations that come forward in the budgeting process, looking at a multi-year implementation of reductions and use of fund balance and reserves, then becomes our plan moving forward once we have more information. Next slide. We have really 2 sets of reserves. We have reserves that we can use and reserves that are restricted. So I'll talk about the ones that we have the ability to use towards this problem. We have unappropriated fund balance audited as of June 30th at $1.8 million. Our unemployment reserve is $517,000. ERS $1 million, TRS $307, workers' comp $260, and insurance reserves of $463,000. That gives us a total of $4,400,000 that we have the ability to move around as needed. Some will be used we move into layoffs, we would have with the unemployment reserve is for us to pay that, for instance. Some would be used for ERS, TRS. Those are the first ones you would utilize. That's what they're there for. They're there. We put them away over the years for this year and years in the future. Restricted balances include employee benefit reserve, capital reserve, and debt service. These funds cannot be used to fill budget gaps or appropriate in the next year's budget. They have purpose. They are designated by the board and by the state with what we can spend those on. So that money, that $2.8 million is spoken for, if you will. It's restricted. That has to come out of the conversation. So we look at a $1.9 million aid reduction. We take a 3-year approach. 3 years is arbitrary. It's just what we're hearing it could take to get out of this. And we look at the total amount of money that we have in unappropriated fund balance as of today, 1.8 million, reserves 2.6. We subtract that from the 5.7 and we look at $1.3 million of programmatic reductions. If you add those up, it becomes $5.7 million. A couple points with this. This does not take into account, this conversation does not take into account any increased revenues from tax increases, or if we're able to increase rents, or we have other things like that. So this is just a very basic conversation of one way out. Yep. It does not. It does not yet. Exactly. Yes. It will. It will add to the overall revenues that we receive, but because we have some uncertainty even in that arena right now, such as the solar pilots and these things that are changing, it's not for this conversation today. It'll come out in the 5-year projection, that plan. Yes.
Okay, I'm okay to go, Mike? Okay, my question, Brian, so of yours, on your 3-year umbrella here, unappropriated fund balance 1.8, reserves 2.6, and programmatic reduction 1.3. I take it that what you did was to say we have 1.9 per year, 5.7 is the 3-year. I know how much I have of the fund of the unappropriated fund balance and reserves to use. Therefore, the balance that I have to make up the 5.7 is the 1.3 million.
That's correct.
Where that number comes from.
Yeah, and Mike, that's the important piece of that conversation, which I haven't gotten to yet, is that 1.8 and 2.6, so the unappropriated and the reserves are actually a spend down, where programmatic reductions, if we were to cut, actually, can we go to the next slide? I'll show this. The next slide is a 1 year. If we were to cut that $433,000, if you keep and maintain in the budget that $443,000, that gives you your million that you need, $1.3 million that you need over the 3 years. So it's not a cumulative 400,000, 400,000, 400,000 out of the budget. It is in fact 400 cut at some point out of the budget, as long as you do it the first year and carry it 3 more years. You don't re-enter that $400,000 into the budget. It's the cumulative effect of removing that $400,000 in programmatic reductions over the same time period. Any questions on that? It's hard with the masks. Yep.
Mary had her hand up first. Mary, go ahead.
What about the situation where you've got maybe, because we're talking about state aid, okay, state aid reductions, 1.9 is 9.20% of state aid. But the next year, did you account for the fact that then we are at 7.6 million as opposed to
Yeah, we're taking the 1.9 million, 20% reduction, and holding that constant through the 3-year conversation.
Yeah,
I
but
can't,
that wouldn't be the next if it was 20% the next
we
year.
just don't have that answer, Mary,
don't
as far as would they
okay.
recalibrate based on the reduction of state aid? You know, as we've talked about here, we still don't have the answer for transportation aid next year. If they're, rather this year, when we made the state aid claims, our numbers were down so far, they're going to hold harmless. These are all the things that we don't have answers from the state to. But to your point, we could, in fact, once we reduce the 2 million, the state aid could have been the 20% of that reduced amount would be less. In fact, we just don't know the answer. Very similar to we don't know the answer that 20% is going to truly be Skodak's reduction if they go into this plan. There's a lot of conversation in the news right now, if you've watched it, about high-need districts and how this is going to disproportionately affect them. Much like the last time we had aid reductions, it did not hit across the board. It did not affect the same way. It took everybody's the same amount percentage off for everybody, but it didn't affect them the same way. That's a lawsuit that NYSEB put up against SED, which is why one of the reasons we think aid was not reduced this time. So there's so many unknowns. We have to go with what we know. We know they're talking about a 20%, and we know what we have. We know they're looking at a 3-year horizon before before aid revenues would come back to a stabilized level. They may not even come back at that point, but you have to pick something to start. This slide is showing what we would have to use per year or have cuts per year to make that $1.9 million. And if you go on to the next slide, thanks, Jason. If the next slide is showing us if we use all of our unappropriated fund balance and all of our reserves, in 23-24, you're out of money. And you have a huge spike in programmatic reductions. And if we were to use every ounce of what we had, at that point, Mr. Heiser, you would have a $1.9 million reduction in the programmatic areas. You have no more savings account at that point. You've used it. You've exhausted it.
Brian, I want to just jump in because I think when we look at all the slides, this is probably the most important one, in my opinion, as we use these one-time infusions of revenue through fund balance and reserve to maintain a level of programming without revenue coming in. If we spend all that money down, eventually we're going to get to a point where that money goes away to support a level of program that we won't have the revenue stream to support potentially. So, as we talk about this, and Mr. Charsky makes a great point, right? We have to kind of take a look, and it's easy to take a look in a 3-year cycle, divvy that up over 3 years, kind of get a sense of what that looks like. But we know there's moving parts all the time. We can't project even what the tax cap is going to look like at the moment. And we can't project what the revenue stream will look like. What we can deal with is what is known. And we know this for the moment. If this is where we are, and we just apply this over the course of the next 3 years, spending down all those reserves and fund balance is going to put us in a precarious situation at the end of it all, unless we get a huge infusion of revenue back from the state or from the federal government, some kind of stimulus or money infused into the revenue side of the budget. Otherwise, we won't be able to support a balanced budget. We'll have program expenses that will outseed the revenue that we're able to put into it. So
I think it's an important conversation for tonight as we start this budget season a little earlier than most, that we can't just throw all of our reserves at this. We can't throw all of our unappropriated fund balance, because without knowing where we're going to be in the end, you have this huge spike. And that's the point of this tonight, is this is not an answer to anything. It's not a plan at all. It's to show if we do what makes logical sense. You throw everything you have at it. That's why you have it. But if it doesn't correct, or if it takes longer to correct, we're going to put ourselves in a very bad situation, and one that can't be recommended. Go on to the next slide.
You said after the end of those 3 years, then we're looking at the full, we've used up our reserves. Is it the full 1.9, or is it the 1.9 minus if we make the programmatic?
It would be 1.9 minus the original 400,000.
So you have to find an additional like 1. Yeah, all right. Okay.
It's overall to the system, it's a $1.9 million hit. Programmatic. There are a lot of variables that are not involved with this. in this presentation. It's more just a starter of a conversation to say what would happen if. We need much more information to be able to have an intelligent conversation about what do we do. It's just, again, with the information that we have today with the knowns, which there are not a lot of, it's where we are. Go to the next slide for me. Since July, we have made a decision where folks have either left the organization for other jobs or retired. We have not filled those. And what you'll see is a total reduction of cost of $459,000 so far. Through restructuring, reorganization, not filling positions, we've been able to, out of budget from last year, have this not spent, if you will. Show what we've done to date by not filling those positions that came available through various means. Retirements, again, movement into other positions.
I think a great reminder for the board too. Let's recognize, even though we're, in a model where half the kids are coming in, we still have the same kids, same amount of work. So anytime we don't fill a position, we're really getting creative and shifting responsibilities in some capacity to folks that are leaving the system and have to absorb that to some capacity. So, recognize that it's not because we don't have a need. It is a reshifting of responsibilities and amongst other members within the organization, restructuring current delivery models so that student needs can be met. So, for example, our special ed teacher positions that we have there, we don't have less special ed students, but we worked with the special ed department at the high school and looked at special ed delivery. And working with the teachers, we felt we could move forward with that savings and not replace those two positions and still provide and meet requirements of IEPs at the high school. So if we needed it, we would certainly have to put it there. And we are currently moving forward successfully, but those individuals that have picked up that workload feel that workload. It feels different to them. So I think that's an important distinction, note to make as we move forward.
Just go to the next slide. So final thoughts. This is going to be long-term. Decisions we make today are going to impact the future. I have a strong responsibility to the future of the school district. I make a recommendation to Mr. Chevier and ultimately to you to make a decision. That's what's guiding my thought process and guiding those recommendations. When I started here, I said I want to leave this in a better place than I took it. And right now, with the economic times that we're in, that's not a feeling I have. Mindfulness. So, these programs have impacts. They have impacts at the individual level, students, staff, parents, community. I mean, we recognize that. And I think it's important for you to recognize in us when we make a recommendation, we are thinking about that and thinking about what not only the short-term economic impact is, but what the long-term programmatic impact is, not only within the walls, but also out into the community and for the students.
Right, let me interrupt you for just a minute. At this point, I'm going to tell you, we've really struggled internally with this. Layoffs, program reductions. When you start talking about those things, over the last few months, you've heard me say it time and time again at board meetings and publicly. We have seen our organization full of strong educators, folks that live in this community. Many of them are members of our staff. We employ a lot of people within this community. All of those folks have really worked hard and diligently to rally and try to open school in the middle of a pandemic for our students, provide an instructional program, have done food drives. I mean, these, we talk about program reductions. I think it's important to know, when we talk about that, those, program relates to the people that run those programs, and it costs us money to do that. When we look at a situation like we're in now, it's gut-wrenching to even think that you have to talk about program reductions when you have individuals, every single one, from bus drivers to custodians to teachers to administrators, who have worked diligently over the last 6 and 7 months to get us to a point where we are today. Is it perfect today? No, but you know you've got a group of committed folks that are working their tails off to try to provide the best for our kids in our community. And, you know, to sit here and start to talk publicly about the reality of a shortcoming of revenue and what that means, it almost makes you sick to your stomach. And when times might be a little bit better and under different circumstances, it doesn't really make it any easier to talk about, but it's a pretty tough time. And we've had folks that have really rallied and pulled together. And I think it's important to note that doesn't go unnoticed, and it's greatly appreciated. And as we move forward through the budgeting process, as we have done since Brian and I have been here, we will continue to be transparent and open with all of our employees and what that means, and our community, so they are aware of what any of those programmatic reductions potentially could be. As Brian has mentioned, we're not ready to talk about those things. There's too many unknowns even in this current year, but we have to understand that it's a reality. When you turn the news on and you're watching the news and you know you've got a shortfall significantly in the state budget, we just have to understand that that's part of the reality we're dealing with now. Sorry, Brian.
Question, Mike.
Yes.
So, from what you're saying, we're starting to get a handle on this, and you would expect that we would, as a board, start having to make decisions in the next budget cycle. Starting, we're going to know more information. We're going to know how much money is available, and then in March and April, we may be starting to look at making these decisions.
Yeah, I would say probably in the budgeting cycle, we would assume we're going to get information and updates. But I would say we might even need to look at it sooner than that, Mike. If you know, the Department of Budget comes out December 31st and says we're taking that 20% reduction, we're gonna have to make some decisions about how we get to $1.9 million. You know, we've already started. We shared that with you during the budget cycle last year. There's a plan. You've seen tonight again how we've tried to not fill positions if they've come open. So we're inching toward that number, so the impact would be minimal if necessary. But if it's 20%, there's still going to be some impact. And what makes it challenging is school isn't normal school right now. So we're operating under different circumstances. There's parts of our program that aren't running. We're not sure about athletics. You'll hear a little bit more about that coming up. You know, we've got fall sports running, but winter sports is still an unknown. And we've got earmarks in the budget to run those things. So there's so many moving targets here, but we do need to be ready this current year to make that 20% reduction. But moving forward, we're going to have to recognize that money isn't going to flow probably like it has in years past. So we need to be ready to be thinking about that.
Mr. Heiser, to your point, the worst case scenario is happening, the mid-year cuts where you couldn't deal with them in July when you wanted to is in fact what we're going to be up against the school year. It's why you saw the other schools make that decision. Their state aid cuts are $40 and $50 million. They don't have time to recuperate from a mid-year cut. They just wouldn't. So they go out and they say we have to do it today. That's why, again, some have and some haven't. It's the worst scenario for us. Everything we have to cut is worth half the value of what it would have been in July, and you have the effect of that reduction being taken out of a system that's working. It's clearly the absolute worst thing that could happen. But we'll work through it, and we've started to make those moves to process through that with the least amount of impact this year possible. It's a perfect storm right now, and as I hear decisions in January, it's even worse. That's just where it's at. Jason mentioned this, but to me, it's about communication to you, to the community, to staff, as we go through this with the transparency that you come to get from us, and the humanized side of it, right? This is our community. This is our. It's going to affect everybody.
Is it 1.9 after the $400,000 reductions that we've approved?
1.9 is the total reduction that we could see from state aid. What we've done to offset that is hold back the 400,000 and change from not replacing positions that have either retired or left the organization. Correct, if we did nothing else this year. So far, we've been able to sustain the cost of COVID. We've been able to sustain things that we've had to purchase systems within the budget, but that may change as well, right? As we continue the school year. What happens in that special ed families, depending on bus repairs. That's why they're moving numbers, if you will. It's not, can't say today we're all school. We have a very bad heat season with events that are open up earlier in the second, so our costs of pressure. These are all variables that are handled within the typical school year. Given the cuts that are as the information comes out, I expect we'll be doing this every month. Side with the budget conversation.
You're not muted, right?
No, he's open.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. No problem. Ready.
All right. So as we've done the last few months, as we've gotten together at the meetings, it's important to give the board an update on reopening. Currently, there's challenges every day. I want to start with talking about programmatic and plans for some outreach within the community. So it's my hope that next week we will send out a survey to, just like we did in the spring, to students, parents, teachers. We want input and feedback. We're 5 weeks into the school year. And we're seeking input from the community. As we said we would do when we did our reopening plan, we will reach out to individuals. And we've got some different groups of individuals to reach out to. We've got some students in a remote only option. We've got some students in a hybrid option. And we want to make sure we hear from everybody. So there will be communication outreach that will be going out, encouraging folks to fill out a survey. We had great responses on the surveys we've put out in the past, and we're certainly looking for feedback. In addition to that, communication will be going out to our reopening task force, the members of our different committees and teams. We'd like to regather that group who took a great deal of time over the summer to gather input and feedback from that group specifically. They received a great deal of information over the summer, helped us develop our plan, and we had discussed pulling that group and team back together for some conversation about how things are going. So we can talk about the elephant in the room, right? Remote instruction. You know, it's no secret we've received some concerns. I remember running into one of the school board members in the grocery store a few weeks ago, and how's everything going? How's school? And there was some concern expressed about remote days. And so the response was, we got to give it a little time. Let's check in on remote days. We got to give everybody an opportunity to get their feet wet. Dig into this a little bit and see how it's going. And so what I think is important to note on remote instructional days, and remember, we've got a multitude of instructional approaches happening since the start of the school year. So we've got in person for K-3. We've got a group of teachers currently at 3, 4, and 5 that as teachers are responsible for in-person instruction and also a group of remote students every day. So half the kids are in front of the teachers, the other half are at home. Those teachers are ultimately responsible for both groups of kids every day. That instruction is, as it's being delivered in person, there are remote assignments that are being given to kids. Those students are expected to do those assignments on remote days, which connect to what is happening in the in-person teaching in the classrooms. I will say our teachers have worked incredibly hard. They're planning 2 different types of activities each and every day for the different groups of students. But it's a challenge. It's stressful for our teachers, and especially over the last few days, I have received some emails. I know Mr. Derby has received some emails as well, with parents expressing their great concern about the lack of engagement on those remote days. Can't argue with that. I think our teachers are doing an incredible job to try to reach those kids, but we're asking some of our youngest learners in some instances to be independent. We know in some situations, some of those students might be home independently by themselves, might not have mom and dad there with them to help them out. There might not be a grandparent or someone else. And in some instances, those kids are independently at maybe 10 years old, looking at having to do some work on their own with little guidance. And so it's not ideal. I want to remind folks, when we developed the plan, there's no playbook for this. We looked at space, we looked at staffing, we started with the youngest groups and worked our way up for in-person learning. And the promise to everybody always was, we need to start. We need to open schools safely. We need to know we can open schools safely for not only our kids, but for our employees and our teachers. And I think we've done an outstanding job with that. At the same time, we have also said, once we start, we got to give it enough time for us to take a look at it, see what's working well, try to make some improvements. And if we aren't satisfied with where we're at, we need to pivot and make a shift and see if there is something we can do to improve the instructional program for any of our students, not just kids in grades 3, 4, 5, or 4, 5, and 6, but also for any of our students that are within the system that are receiving instruction. We have our optional remote only students. Those students are receiving a program. Feedback has been somewhat positive. Our secondary students in grades 7 through 12, feedback has been relatively positive. There are challenges. We're up against it. It's hard. I've said that very openly. I've been very clear about that. The instructional program for 4, 5, and 6 is worthy of some time and attention. It's not anybody's fault. It's just a matter of developing a plan, implementing the plan, having some time to take a look at it. But I think, our teachers have worked incredibly hard. It's not our teachers' fault. It's a matter of the system. They're not superhuman. They're doing the best they can under the circumstances, but we also know how important it is for parents to be partners in all of this process. In some of our homes, students just don't have the same level of supervision as others, and they're young. They're not little high school students. They're elementary kids. So, if the board hasn't heard any complaints from parents, I'm sure there's probably some folks online tonight that would like to come on and in public comment will tell you a little bit about their thoughts and feelings with remote instruction at those levels. We never said we wouldn't fix it if we didn't think it was working well, but we had to give it time to look at it and assess it and fix it. So we are currently looking at a variety of options. Not really ready to kind of talk to you about what those options are tonight. There are lots of folks that need to be involved in that process, a group of teachers that need to really be a part of that process with us and really talk about what we can do to make that better. We've got, we also understand the sense of urgency, right? So I want to make that very clear. So we need to engage individuals in a process. I think we've got a pretty good handle on the instructional pieces from the other side at the secondary level, remote instruction. There are good things happening at all of these levels. Even at 4, 5, and 6, there are good things that are happening there. that level of engagement and interaction needs to be better. That I will just say openly. We've spent some time over the last probably week or so before emails started to pour in. We've been having this conversation internally a little bit about keeping a close eye on 4, 5, and 6 and really looking at what we can do to change and up the engagement. So I need you to understand to stay tuned. You know, I know I'm dangling some information there for you, but I have to be very careful too. I can't tell you here's what's going to happen until I know we can actually execute it. It's going to be important for us to be able to do that. I've heard the concerns. Team has heard the concerns. Our teachers have heard the concerns. And our teachers are struggling with wanting to help and connect with kids better. And they're not superhuman. They can't do it both ways. So we're looking at some options that I think will really solve some of the issues that are coming in that we have kind of felt over the last week or two as we have kind of settled in. But it's important to just note any shift in the system isn't just a shift for the instructional program. It impacts facilities, it impacts transportation, it impacts food service. There are contractual things to look at. There's all sorts of things that happen. So we understand an urgency to get up and moving. I will tell you that we're all committed to make some changes to that. And we understand that it needs to be done sooner rather than later. So we're working diligently to do that. So certainly by November 5th, in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to articulate to you very closely in more detail what that plan will be. That might not satisfy some people, I understand. I don't think it's an epic failure at the moment, but I will tell you, I think it can be better. The implication and the domino impact on some of these things really needs to be flushed out. We will begin communicating with parents as soon as we know what that potentially will look like. And so I can't communicate now. I'm doing that now, telling folks that we will commit to making some improvements and changes there, that I do think we'll get after some of the issues that have been raised and brought to our attention. And truthfully, nobody's disagreeing with the concerns that they brought. It's not a pointing the finger opportunity. It's not our teacher's fault. It's not our administrator's fault. We had to develop a plan. We did it based on the information we had at the time. We know more today because of our experience of getting into the building and trying it, knowing what we can do internally, knowing what our capacity is to be able to, look at pivoting and making some adjustments to improve the experience. Our kids deserve it. Our parents deserve it. Our teachers deserve it. Everyone deserves that. And so, as we said, we appreciate everybody's patience and we appreciate the feedback. And I value very much parents and individuals reaching out, sending me emails, sending Mr. Derby emails, and we appreciate your patience. We know how important every minute of every day of instructional time is. We know. It's our livelihood and our lives, and we care deeply about the experience that our kids have. So stay tuned. That information will be shared in greater detail at November 5th, the workshop. We're going to talk about our shortcomings and challenges. That was the idea at the workshop. I'm here to tell you today that's one of them. And again, it's not the teacher's fault. It's not Mr. Derby's fault or Ms. Rocher's fault or Mr. Chevier's fault. We're in the middle of a pandemic trying to open school the best we can. But we recognize there are challenges and improvements need to be made, so we will pivot and make some changes. You have my word on that. That's what we will do.
Any questions from the board? I have one. I assume that whatever changes is going to come with a price tag.
Probably.
Okay.
We probably come with some expense. Anytime, we're sitting in and anytime we look at reallocating using space, let's use the gym, right? That's come up. Why aren't we using the big gym at the elementary school? So you go into the gym for a basketball game and you listen to the acoustics in the gym. It's not a great learning space. So we didn't want to initially start out using the gym as a learning space. When you look at what is the lesser of two evils, right? If my kids on remote days aren't engaged enough and we need to bring kids in and utilize that space, we would rather get the kids in for the space, do what we can to make that space more appropriate for learning. So we can do that. But that space does not come with technology. It does not come with all the things that would come in a typical classroom that kids are going to need for learning. Might not have the same level of support that we need in that space. So if we're looking to shift and utilize some different space throughout our buildings, which remember, the reason we didn't, pack 25 kids in a room or do some of these things, at least initially, cohort model was important. And we owed it to our faculty and staff to open as safely as we could. So as if I'm a teacher returning, and I'm going to remind everybody, inherently our teachers are at a higher level of risk than lots of other people that go to work every day. They're coming into a herd community. And so inherently there's more risk for them. So when we developed those cohorts, we wanted smaller numbers in those classes. So 10 to 12, socially distant. We use larger spaces. I think our faculty and staff feel very differently today about their ability to come in to the school environment. We know that we have worked very closely with faculty and staff to make it as safe as it can possibly be for them. We're not going to put them in an environment that would be unsafe for them. And they know that. I would hope that they know that. The feedback has been very positive from faculty and staff, so I feel comfortable sharing that with you. But to some degree, when we look at doing things like that, there's inherently going to be some expense. So some of the savings you saw tonight, we just recognize it's cost of doing business in the middle of a pandemic. We might have to spend some money to do it. I don't have a great handle on what that expense is going to look like yet. You bring more kids in person, that puts a tax on transportation that's got a limit to the number of kids on the buses. How do you get more kids on buses in person? There's a lot of logistical things to work through. I don't, truthfully, I'll tell you, I don't care how much work it is. It's a lot of work. I don't care how much work it is. Our kids are worth it. We can reevaluate. I think for our teachers' peace of mind, they're worth it. And we need to just explore every option. Now that we've learned from being back in school for 5 weeks with the school open for business, I feel better about our ability to operate today. Feel much better today than I did just prior to the opening of school. None of us knew what to expect. So I hope that answers your question.
It's good. I mean, obviously I knew the answer when I asked it, but I was just making a point.
Yeah. I could have just said yes.
You could have.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right.
So moving on, there's a few other things that I do feel that warrant some attention. So athletics, as you know, the fall season is underway. Soccer, cross country, tennis, and golf are all in operation. Actually, I say that golf just finished. So their season started almost immediately, finished either today or yesterday, their season finished. And although short, I will tell you, our student athletes seem to really appreciate and value the opportunity to be out and have an experience, put a Maple Hill jersey on, represent their school and school community. Yesterday I had the opportunity to go to the boys senior day. It was a beautiful day for soccer. We've got quite a few seniors on the boys varsity team, and our parents seem very appreciative of the opportunity to be able to see their seniors stand out there and be recognized their final year in school here. So when you attend an event like that and you see that happen across the board, deep down inside, you're doing good things, right? We're trying to make the experience as normal for our students as possible. And we know that the parents that are involved in invested sports and athletics plays an important part in the life of those who choose to take part, much like arts and music and all those other things do for our other students. So it's good to see them have the opportunity. There's no decision on the winter season yet. The winter season, we will, right now, winter sports is projected to start at the end of November. There is an end of November potential start date. There's a January 1st potential start date for winter athletics. But winter athletics brings indoor athletics and high-risk sports like wrestling and basketball that we haven't received any guidance on whether or not we will even be allowed to run those seasons from the New York State Department of Health. But the section 2, Patroon Conference, is gathering information saying if it's allowable, are we going to participate? I think I've said this all along, if we can do it and we can do it safely, I think we owe it to our students to provide the opportunity. Parents might elect to not have their child play. That's always an option. It's a hard one for a parent to make. But if it is allowable and we can do it safely, I've said this all along, why would we deny the opportunity for our students? Now, if we have an outbreak of COVID and we've got lots of issues, we might change our mind, just from a health and safety perspective. But if our numbers remain where they are, then I think I'm going to hold true to my word. If we get clearance to do it, we know what the guidance is, we can follow the guidance and do it safely, then we should provide an opportunity for our students. The Department of Health guidance has been really interesting, and I need to just share with you, there's limit to 2 spectators per athlete. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of fun for us to staff and police, as we have to have a sign-in table for contact tracing. We need to make sure we social distance while we're watching games. So if you go to a soccer field, you'll see kind of like what we did at graduation. There are boxes along the field that are 6 feet apart. You bring 2 folding chairs. You're not allowed to sit on the bleachers. Set up your folding chairs and you sit there. You've got to sign in. We need a phone number in the event. There is contact tracing that needs to be done. We are able to do that safely. So we've made spectator badges. Each student athlete has gotten 2 spectator badges, and those are presented at the sign-in table when going to an event. And we have individuals sign in under the name of the student athlete that they're there to watch. I will tell you, both visiting teams and when I've had the opportunity to go away, folks are really good, working hard to try to comply. It's not easy. You know, you get folks that wander in sometimes, and you know, it's a lot of policing and kind of trying to do the right thing there. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but Mr. Silver, athletic director, has done a great job. We've got chaperones at every event that are helping out, which is an expense we did not plan for, by the way. We don't usually have chaperones at soccer games and at tennis matches, but we need people to contact trace and sign folks in. We got to pay those individuals to do that. So we appreciate their help and support. Probably the biggest challenge we've had is with soccer and mask wearing in soccer. So the guidance from the New York State Department of Health has really been wear a mask, but it goes on to say to the extent that it can be tolerated, which has kind of left this avenue for what exactly does that mean. And so the expectation here, as I've already mentioned tonight, if we can do it safely, we'll do the guidance. Mr. Silver held his meet the coaches meeting before athletics started up. And our guidance to our coaches was there's an expectation. You wear your mask. If you need to pull it down because you're winded, pull it down, put it back up, continue play. But we need to be responsible for the health and safety of the team that we're playing, the coaches that are on the benches, the spectators that are there. That's the expectation. We're not perfect, but I'm very proud of our athletes. You probably saw it sometimes union articles. Mr. Gillespie was referenced in the articles. But some of the challenges, you know, when play starts and some other teams might pull their mask down and play a large portion of the game without masks on, has created some controversy. You know, we want everybody to be safe, but not everybody is seeing eye to eye on that. So there's been a lot of work that I've done kind of on the back end with my colleagues and checking on regulation and what we need to do. Held a meeting last night, an optional meeting for soccer parents, to come on just to hear about some of the back end legwork that's happened and our inability really to control what the other team does, right? And I think that's important. It's a message from our athletic director, myself, to our coaches about expectation. This is what we expect our student athletes to do if they want to play. We understand it puts them at an increased risk if they're playing against kids that don't have a face mask on. So we can either pull the plug on the whole season, not give kids the opportunity to play. Parents can pull their kids if they choose to do so, or inherently know that there is some additional risk for our kids playing. Being in school is inherently a greater risk. So parents seem very appreciative for the information. We're hoping as the season moves forward, it continues to get pressed, that we will see better compliance with that and more effort being made. I think just showing effort is the responsible thing to do. So just know that that's been a challenge. So far, there haven't been significant issues, but there's been a lot of questions as to why other teams might not be wearing masks during athletic contests. Again, I've talked a little bit about consistency and compliance within the conference. Transportation we anticipated that being an issue. It does. Transportation's done a phenomenal job freeing up buses, but it does, every day there's challenges with transportation, and it does continue to be a challenge in getting kids, especially to away meets or matches. And our change in our schedule has been with a later end time has presented some challenges in athletics. So we'll keep you posted, let you know how the winter season plays out, and we'll keep you updated. We're real proud of our student athletes for setting a great example and doing a great job. Wanted to talk to the board a little bit about our staffing challenges, and staffing challenges are real. We've got, in the substitute category, and I'm going to use this opportunity. I know there's a lot of attendees online. If anybody wants to be a substitute, we'd love to give Shelley a call in the district office. We can talk to you about what you need to do to be a substitute. We're looking for substitutes not only for teachers, but for teaching assistants. And so we'll work with you if you have, if you're a little uneasy about what that might look like, we'll break you in slowly, but we could certainly use the help. So what you see here is our substitute list. So for teachers, we have 5 substitutes. For teaching assistants, we have 4. And when I say there are limitations, some of our substitutes might only be certified at the secondary level and might say, I'm happy to sub for you, but I'm a secondary sub. I'm not an elementary sub. And we typically comply with that request. So that does not mean that we have 5 teachers available to go anywhere in the district. It's probably a half and half. Presents a real challenge. Facilities, custodians, 0. We have somebody is sick, somebody is quarantined. We don't have the ability to get somebody else in and backfill. That presents challenges. Transportation, drivers, we have 2 substitute drivers and we have 1 aide substitute. So again, makes it challenging. Health and safety, right? We have quarantine, COVID testing, employees, family members. When we talk about some of these things, we all know what quarantine means. I get a call from the health department. Now I'm required to be where in isolation and quarantine from everybody else for 14 days. I get an email from the Rensselaer County Department of Health. If anybody is put on mandatory quarantine, I get an email regularly showing if any of our students, faculty, staff have been put on, if they're Rensselaer County resident, if they've been put on quarantine. That gets forwarded to nurses, to building principals, and there's some coordination. Our teachers need to know because those kids are not out for a little while. We've got to provide instruction to those students. But in the cases of faculty and staff, now we've got to figure out how we're going to teach. And as you know, we don't have a lot of substitutes. So there's a lot of covering and shifting internal people around to help cover if necessary. We also have COVID testing. If I'm required to go get a COVID test, can't come into school. We have actually taken that a step further, and for the health and safety of our students and our employees, if my spouse is exposed and she goes for COVID testing, or one of my kids and I'm a close contact, we're recommending until those results come back, you probably should stay home. Presented some challenges. And again, we're running into employees' family members, right? We remember our teachers are people too. They have families, kids at home. The school calls. You know, Mr. Chevier, one of your kids is showing symptoms of COVID. My child is out until I get a note from a doctor. And if the doctor is unable to give me a note because they're not sure what it is and sends my child for a COVID test, probably not coming back to work until we get that positive or negative test result back, which really presents some challenges. We have had open positions. So we've had 4 teaching assistant positions open, and those were due to maternity and resignation and backfilling some positions. We had 3 applicants for 4 spots. So even, you know, decent jobs for folks that are local and are looking for some work, even if they're not local. Teaching assistant is a certified position. You have to get your certification in SCODAC. We will hire you if you don't have your certification, but we give you a window of time to complete that certification. So you don't have a year. How many days, Shelley? 90 days. We give you 3 months. There's classes you have to take and things that you have to do. So what we'll do is pay you as a substitute to get your certification, and then we will retroactively give you the rate for being a certified teaching assistant. We will hire folks. So again, I know we've got a large audience out there. If anybody is looking, you know, and sees a TA position open, we will give you all the information you need. It's a great job if you're able to do it. Temporary monitor position. There was one for the health office. We do recognize we need some support there. That is an unbudgeted expense, but it's necessary. We had 6 applicants for that position. And again, we will be continuing our recruitment effort. I know Brian has reached out to Chuck. We want to get a bus down at the end at the transportation garage at the end of Maple Hill Road. You'll see the bus out with signs again. We're going to do another drive a bus day. We're going to be doing some of those things to actively try to recruit. But again, anybody at home who knows anybody who's looking for some work, we can give you all the information you need. What are the requirements to be a bus driver? We hope you take advantage, come out. We'll do it safely. We'll socially distance. We'll sanitize. We'll do the things we need to do. But come on out. We would love to see more people applying for positions in our schools. It does present a real challenge for us. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the dashboard, but I would encourage all of you, if you haven't yet, go on, poke around on the dashboard, take a look. This is, again, is a new mandate for us. I did it on the first day and Shelley watched me do it, and I was able to tag Shelley, and she does it diligently every day. And I greatly appreciate her help with that. There's contact that needs to go on with school nurses. We have to report things like if we did referred a child to a doctor, they went home with a COVID symptom, they can't come back unless they've seen their doctor, or they've received a negative COVID test, or they stay out for 14 days. It's an option when they go home with the symptom. But we need to know how many students each day we've referred to see a doctor. If we know they've been tested, we need to report known tests. And then, of course, if we have any positives, we will be required to post known positives. Go on and take a look at that. New information has recently come out. You've probably seen from the governor. We do have hotspots around the state of New York. The governor has talked again about, if necessary, you know, there will be school closures. There will be business closures, again, if necessary. That he has come out and said that. You can look at the color-coded system that he has developed. Again, I want to say some of those hotspots, you know, we're upwards of like 6% positivity rate. Remove those hotspots, in the state of New York, we're at right around 1%. So the governor is doing his best to try to, you know, mitigate the spread of that, but we have to recognize we are entering cold and flu season. So we don't know what that means. So I've talked a little bit about this already. Rensselaer County also sends me information daily. and any of our students, the reason for quarantine. And some reasons have been we've traveled out of state. We went to Florida and we went for 4 days in Florida or a week, and we've returned. It's reported to Rensselaer County. Rensselaer County calls, they're on mandatory quarantine for 14 days. So they're not positive. We know it's due to travel. Some might have been due to exposure. So we get that level of information, not specifically, but potential exposure goes on the list. I will give credit again to Rensselaer County. They've been great at staying in touch with us. And from the county level, we still continue to meet weekly with the county executive and the director of the Department of Health. To this day, every Wednesday at 10:30, that meeting happens with Rensselaer County superintendents. So we're grateful for the county executive given his time and the director of health as we continue to work through this together. Update on our learning management system. I know this has kind of been like the process to get this thing up and running. We are right at the tail end of the process. We're thinking our teachers will likely get a hold of this probably next week. And again, as I've said, the responsible thing to do when it comes to teachers is give them an opportunity at this point to learn it, and we will slowly roll this out to the community. I spent a little time with the leadership team in Canvas today and looking at it to better understand what it'll look like on the student and parent side, what it looks like on the teacher side. And I do believe that our parents are really going to appreciate this system, especially if we go out on full remote to any capacity. It's going to be great. And even if I'm in person, even if I'm hybrid, it is a great way to organize all the information for students. So we are working through some final preparations for that. They told us 6 weeks. We're about 8 weeks. But if you get the Onboard magazine and some of those things, you've seen learning management systems have been very hot. So you've got lots of school districts who are jumping in at the same time we are, which presents a little bit of a slowdown issue. But stay tuned, that will be coming, and we appreciate everyone's patience with that. We're working as fast as we can. So one of the last things I wanted to talk about, so early October, 20-minute storm wreaked havoc on my emergency closing days. We had trees down all over the place, and we had a power outage down at the elementary school. Right really at the corner of Ransom and Green Avenue, there was a tree branch down on some wires that was there from the storm. It was there all day Thursday. I got up at about 4 in the morning and drove down there, and lo and behold, it was still sitting on the wires Friday morning. Here's the thing with school and remote learning. Like, if you don't have power, it doesn't work so well. We recognize that, there's been a lot of talk about flipping to remote learning and not using snow days and making everyone remote on those days instead of calling snow days. If you lose power, it's problematic. We knocked everybody out because we knew we had widespread power outages within the community, and a lot of our kids on Thursday, the day after the storm, didn't have powers in their house. So those remote kids couldn't access anything. We knew that. We knew we had teachers that at home didn't have power. Some of our, we've got to take all these different factors into account. So school was closed Thursday. We woke up Friday morning. I was hoping to go down and see a crew working on that tree Friday morning, and potentially, keeping fingers crossed, that the power would come on, we could have school. But that wasn't the case. It came on about 12:30 Friday afternoon. Didn't really have a choice. So we brought high school students in, knowing that some students were still without power. We got some emails. How are we supposed to do this without power? Teachers have been great connecting with kids, but we also know food potentially is an issue, even power and getting kids in where they can get some instruction here. There's never a right answer with that. There's no playbook for those days either. So I made the decision to bring in the high school students, 7-12, but close the elementary school. When we talk about those give back days around Memorial Day, if we don't use all of our snow days, we get those days, right? And typically everybody is on the same schedule. When we have one building open and the other building closed, it presents challenges when it comes down to doing things like that. So we no need to cross that bridge just yet. Maybe it won't snow all winter long. That's my hope. So we will see what happens, but I think it's important that the board recognizes, because if you have to have school open for the elementary school because you need the instructional day for state aid purposes and you're out of emergency closing days and you can only be in that particular building, that's likely to create some buzz and some issues, but we can work through that if we come to it. But I think it's important to recognize that when all of your teachers are not on the same schedule now, it presents some challenges and issues. So we'll pay very close attention. Questions?
No questions. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so at this time, we're going to move into our first section of public comment. For the public that's out there, again, it's *3, which will let me know that you'd like to speak. If you're on via video, I'm not sure if you have a button or not, but you can certainly let me know in chat. What's that, Mayor? I don't
Under Q&A, if you
oh, hang on.
there's a couple of
Why
questions
is
there.
that not coming up in chat? Oh, I see it. All right, Sarah, 1 second. Let me get you in here. I'm going to find you. There she is. Okay,
Hello.
so I just unmuted you. Go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. This is Sarah Lant. I am remote teaching K1 this year. I wanted to give a special shout out to Mrs. Rocher. She has gone far above and beyond, making sure that we get all of our things that we need for our reading curriculum virtually. She has been really gone above and beyond, so I wanted to make sure that the board knew and that she is appreciated for all of that extra work.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's see. I think I did already. I actually sent one out. I'm trying to find the list here of the next person. Okay, I see it. Okay, Stacy, I've unmuted you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, guys. My name is Stacy Moscato, for those of you who don't know me. My daughter is a 4th grader at CES. Just some background on me. I do have my master's in education with a concentration in history, and I've been teaching for a little over 15 years. In fact, when I did my student teaching, I actually student taught at Maple Hill High School under Bob Horan, which is part of the reason why we decided to move to this district. I wanted to comment to say I'm extraordinarily supportive of the efforts that parents have made who have spoken out and agree that there are changes needed to ensure that our children do not continue to lose days where they are provided active lessons by their teachers. So far this year, there have been 29 school days, and out of that, students have only received 12 lesson days. They are on pace to have teachers providing lessons for not providing lessons for over a third of the school year. I am concerned that the district is now in mid-October, currently in the process of identifying possibilities for improvement, which is what we're hearing. That does not seem to accept that there is an issue that needs to be resolved, and more importantly, does not identify a specific timeframe for a resolution. We appreciate the district's concern for the student safety, but academic success must also remain a priority. There is no reason to have one without the other, and given the technology available to us, which I'll talk more about in a second, there's no reason for the kids to not be offered more lessons. Changes can be immediately implemented to avoid prolonging the challenges that the students are currently facing in the academic environment. In fact, that is why I decided to speak tonight and to present to the board a possible solution that could be implemented as early as tomorrow. Currently, students in 4th grade, I'm going to focus on that just because that's what grade my daughter is in, receive live lessons twice a week. This means that they are not getting lessons the majority of the school year. That would equate to 24 out of 40 weeks this year they will not receive lessons. Online lesson plans are currently conducted by some, but not all of the teachers in CES and none in fourth grade. If online lesson plans were implemented by all teachers, students would not be losing content daily. The district currently has the tools available to implement this system. Programs like Nearpod, Flipped Classrooms, Loom, Screencastify, and so on and so on. In fact, the district has terrific resources that can assist in implementing such systems. In the elementary school, Mrs. Hirschoff has been teaching and incorporating online lessons for years. And in the middle and high school, Mr. Finney is a huge proponent of technology in the classroom and has and continues to be successful in implementing in his classes much success and has been recognized for this effort. In winning History Teacher of the Year just recently, he said in his acceptance how he has been able and is capable of switching to online virtual lessons at a moment's notice. He teaches classes online with people locally and all over the country. I have no doubt that he would happily do it with his own colleagues. I strongly encourage the school board to look into this option, which can continue providing lessons to students while they are out of school, or if they are forced to be out of school due to a COVID spike. I appreciate your time, and just to show you how sincere I am and how easy the system is to use, I'd be happy, not at the moment, but with you privately to demonstrate to the board how easy it is to create an online lesson. We appreciate what the district has done to ensure that student safety, and that is something that could be implemented. We appreciate what the district has done to ensure student safety, but what I'm suggesting could be implemented immediately or in cases of COVID spikes, or if there was a need for more virtual learning. It makes sense for the district to plan for this now and have teachers ready to implement. This doesn't impact logistics, transportation, food service, and doesn't have a cost. Thank you very much. I appreciate your effort, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you, Stacy. Can't unmute this person. Who's place this sample? Is that a person? Can't mute. ECs? It won't unmute. Oh, hang on. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. That was my fault.
Yeah.
Next person is it, I believe it's ECs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tuttle. I am a real person, so I appreciate that. And I will address the board as such, so no concern there. I will say that I am a parent of a third and fourth grader. We're 100% remote family, and my overall impression is that it is a success, and that you have my support, and there are genuine teachers that are with minimum materials putting forth an excellent program. Some of my concerns, and I've already addressed this, is that we're not fully meeting New York State requirements with respect to specials, which is a little bit, upsetting. I do understand that there are multiple priorities that need to be balanced, but in some instances, I feel like maybe we can share resources, whether it be with colleges. That I work in higher education. I've seen some of these groups reaching out to communities, younger kids, sharing music and arts. There has to be videos of physical education somewhere. I've inside knowledge that that's something our elementary school currently already does. I just wish that the remote families felt more part of the community. I feel like we've been cast aside, unfortunately, and simply forgotten, with the only support being from our teachers. And, that's unfortunate. I guess that would be one of my concerns. And I don't know. I mean, clearly I've seen somebody say that these options are being explored. That is good to hear, but what can we do in terms of getting some access sooner rather than later?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I see anyone else here. Am I missing anybody? I think that's it. Anyone see anything I'm not seeing? I'm looking at 4 different screens here to try to figure out if there's someone. No. No, I think that's it. I just see a note from Tim about his mic's not working. Okay, I got you, Tim. Now we can do about that. Okay, so at this point here, I'm going to go ahead and close the first public comments session. There is one later on, and we're going to go ahead and move into section 4, which is district updates. Yeah, it's October report. That's the enrollment report. That's right. Question 3. We'll go into that. Okay.
So you've probably seen in the newspaper there was a second COVID case. I've tried to keep the board updated on information that comes through Questar. So the Questar program over at the district office has had 2 recent COVID positives with staff. So far, none of their students have tested positive. We've worked closely with Questar 3. I've received calls. They happen to both kind of fall one weekend before the other, but I've received calls over the weekend on those positive cases. The second positive case occurred. They found out that individual was positive, but was out of the building before we actually did the deep clean on the building after finding out about the first positive. So there was limited contact tracing that needed to occur there. But I think it's important for the board and the community to know we've tried to send that information out using our text alert system. We want to make sure people are informed and know, even if it's not our kids and our staff, but it's right here in our school and our community. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Any questions at all about that or the process? I don't need to get into too much detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have. What was I don't have my agenda open.
We're good. Next one is the Utica National
Award. The Utica National Award, you see the attachments that are in there for Utica National. We've received this award for quite a few years in a row. I want to say about 14 years. We've received it. We're up to the Titanium Award. 353 schools are able to participate, and 115 receive the award. So we have received it once again. Mr. Leclerc in the facilities department fills out a significant, pretty thick questionnaire on health and safety. It goes to Utica National, it's reviewed, and once again, Skodak won an award for health and safety, which is always important to recognize not only the work of Mr. Leclerc and the facilities department, but our administrators and teachers and everyone who makes the district safe. So just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that award. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. 4B is building updates. Do you want to open that, or?
Yeah. So what we'll do at this time, we'll have our building principal, Ms. Hill. You want to go first this evening? We'll have Ms. Hill unmute and just kind of give an update.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to choose to talk about some things that tend to happen every year, which is some normalcy for our building. We had our back to school night. It looked a little bit different. It was virtual, but we had all of our teachers and present to our parents, which was nice. Our parents had the opportunity to meet with them and connect, and that went off very well. We have our seniors painting their parking spots, which might seem small to some of us, but it's a big thing for them. It's something that culturally they were really looking forward to for their senior class. So it's nice to be able to give them senior class parking spots and painting, and also their senior portraits. and be able to celebrate them a little bit this year at the start of the year. We had our picture day. That went pretty normal for the school year. It was pretty nice. We got to have our students all get their pictures and our remote students came in and got their pictures as well. We are looking at having a makeup day, but there are challenges with all of that as well. And lastly, just to add, our Q1 interim reports. It's hard to believe it, but they already came out. We're halfway through first quarter, and we're starting to get our groove at the junior senior high school. So we are looking forward to kind of continuing on and wrapping up Q1 successfully. That's all for me.
Any questions for Ms. Hill? Mr. Derby, you want to?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Tuttle and the board, Mr. Chevier, for giving us a chance to update folks tonight. I will echo some of what Mr. Chevier said, but I won't go into detail. Obviously, he spoke in far more detail about some of the things that are going on at CES in terms of our hybrid model. I want to reiterate that it's no fault of our teachers or anyone else. There was a lot of concern with numbers and opening the building and what we could do safely. And as things have gotten open, it does feel much safer and calmer around here. And we are looking to do things to improve that program for our students, for our teachers, and for our community. Up to this point, I think everyone, teachers, students, and parents have done a great job of, working hard and doing what's best for kids in the model that we had developed. And hopefully as we move forward, we can see that continued improvement. A couple of the highlights of things that have gone on around here. We've had some of those events like our virtual open house, got a lot of positive feedback on that. A couple of parents that even commented they think we should maybe stick with this model going forward. I don't know if that'll be the case, but for some, it did create some conveniences for them. You'll see later in the meeting, there was a donation from our Kiwanis in regards to some recess equipment for our students. They gave us a $500 donation, asked what we needed, and went out and purchased and created these cohort bags so that our kids, when we station them at recess, have different activities and games and tools or toys to use and balls to have recess and just create a little more normalcy to our recess while we're out there. So we can't thank our Kiwanis and also our counseling corner and Mrs. Sober and Mrs. Friedfeld, Mrs. O'Grady Day, and Mrs. Colleton for helping make that possible. They're the ones that applied for that grant. I also want to thank Nurse Brewer. When you hear Mr. Chevier talk about all of the challenges with quarantining and doctor's notes and updating lists and just receiving students in our nurse's office with runny noses and coughs and things of that nature. And, knock on wood, at this time, we've been very successful with those COVID tests, but she has really done an outstanding job. And I just want to make sure we recognize the efforts that she's put forth. I know, Jackie's had a lot of success up at the high school. And I'm sure things are going great with that as well. Our PTO, we're not able to do our community fair this year, but our PTO put in a fun run, which we were going to try and do last spring. Obviously, with closure, we weren't able to do it. We've never done a fun run before. We decided to give it a shot virtually. Big thank you to our PTO and Kate Howe for all the work that she put into making that event possible. Raised a lot of money, several $1,000s, which I think was really hard given the fact that, we don't have the PTO coming into our building. We don't have the same assemblies that we normally would to publicize and promote some of these events. And still, we had kids and families making pledges and raising money for, things that are going to go back in and support our kids. And, some of that money is being spent already with different things that the PTO is funding here at the school. So I'm going to leave it at that. I want to thank everybody for all the hard work and time and effort that they're putting in. Mrs. Rocher, is there anything you wanted to add about upcoming events?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Derby. Yeah, we have a couple events coming up. Just kind of continuing on that theme with the PTO. They've been great with really trying to think outside the box and find ways to support our in-person and remote students with activities. For Halloween, we're unable to do our traditional, wear your costume and parade around the building, and that brings the whole village out and all the families, and it's just not safe to do that this year, unfortunately. But our PTO has a great idea for a virtual Halloween celebration coming out soon, but it's going to be like a 2.5 day, lots of virtual activities for kids and families to get involved in from home. So look forward to that. And also we have parent-teacher conferences coming up in November, the evening of November 19th. And then on that November 20th conference day that we have off, we have parent conferences as well. Obviously, those are going to need to be virtual this year. So there'll be more information to come, but we feel really confident in those virtual meetings. I think we've done pretty well perfecting the Google Meet pretty well. There's still some hiccups here and there. And also a lot of clubs and things are starting to take shape. Wanted to mention that K-Kids, which is also open to in-person and remote students, has gone out, and there will be other things coming out. So starting to ramp up those opportunities. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Rocher. Any final comments, Ms. Chevy? No, you're good? Okay, any comments, questions from the board? Okay, let's move into section 5. We got action items. So 5A, action item follow-ups. We have 2. The community advisory group, which we will revisit in December, and the report on the reopening challenges and whatnot that we will discuss in November. Other than that, no other action items. 5B is board discussion, so I'll open it up to the board. Are there any topics for board discussion tonight? Yes, Mr. Heiser.
Just to refer back to the comment made by the one parent who spoke about her 4th grade son, and she said her son does not have any online on the remote day. There's no online any online lesson. Does that mean live online? Can be recorded, but there's no lesson one way or the other.
Sorry. So on those remote days, teachers do provide lessons and activities. What we've heard from a lot of parents, my child will start doing activities at 8 in the morning and by 9:30 they're done. So they have the rest of the day that they're not really engaged in any schoolwork. So, for some students, they need longer than that. But the sense that there are lessons and activities provided by the teachers that are available to them, but there are not, there's no human connection typically on those days.
And is that only in 4th grade, or is that in 5th and 6th as well?
4, 5, and 6.
So
that model is the same for all 3 grade levels.
Okay.
Some teachers will do it a little bit differently. She mentioned Miss Hershoff, who does flipped lessons. Right. And Miss Hershoff teaches in that wheelhouse. She's in that grade level band. So there are some teachers that are doing different activities, but it's not, again, it's not, there's not a requirement of everybody to do the same thing at that level. So to the point of the comment, again, teachers are working diligently in providing activities. Some look very different than others, which has created part of the challenge. It's not the teacher's fault. They're leaving those lessons there. But we know we can improve that engagement
Right.
and time on instruction.
Okay, and that's something that's being looked at and we'll talk about in the next couple of weeks. Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Is that where the 12 and 29 number came from?
Yes. I was gonna say that what he's referring to is the comment online about 12 days or 12 days out of 29 days.
That's correct.
Yes, Mary.
Okay. So Ms. Rocher alluded to this, but I don't know what the community-wide feel is for Halloween either. And I think we ought to be understanding what that is because that's a potential risk for the students. I'm going to close my door and turn my light off because I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, my response to that, I don't know exactly what the plan is, but she did say it's a virtual.
For the students, because we're not going to do
Right.
the parade we usually do, but from a more broader perspective in terms of the community, I mean, that's another way for community spread. So if you've got parents who are bringing their kids and still even going house to house.
Yeah, but that's not a school decision.
I know it's not, but I just didn't know if there was a feel as to how that was, if anything has come out in terms of the advisory.
Would you like me to clarify?
I haven't seen a lot of advisory on Halloween. I know that I think the CDC might have, I think I heard the CDC is putting something out regarding holidays. I know Thanksgiving is coming up as well, and they're concerned about families traveling from out of state and getting together and having spreader events. I think the intention of what the PTO is looking to do here is not encourage everyone to go trick or treating, but give kids the opportunity to maybe put their Halloween costume on, do something virtually, and still allow kids the opportunity to enjoy that holiday to some extent. We usually have a lot of fanfare around it, right? I remember every year I picked a different costume and led that parade, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great community event. And there's always this balance between trying to, keep some of these traditional things going, but doing them differently and safely. I don't know personally what I'm doing. I live in the community with Halloween. My kids are too old to trick or treat, but I'm not sure, if we're leaving candy out front or what we're doing yet. I think, that's a very personal decision that families will kind of have to tackle on their own. But if we do get some information from CDC, it's something we can also push out as a PSA to our public service announcement to our community and help our, keep our community informed. That's something we wanted to do anyway. So we'll look for that. I'll put that down as an action item, Mary.
Thank you.
Mr. Jarsky.
Okay, Brian. Something that, as we're heading into the budget season, that I would like to have information on is the supermajority. I'm curious if the guidelines are going to be the same this year for the supermajority. And I'm not saying anything about the amount of taxes, the percentage of taxes, but I think it's one of the things that we need to think about as we go through the program deficit. What is the appetite for that type of consideration? I know the argument about taxes, I get it all, but I think that's something we need to know early on. I think we need to know it, even by January. What is the community's appetite, hearing what they've just heard tonight? And I think it's really important that we communicate. This isn't a low probability. This isn't something we're considering. The program cuts are going to be a high probability, 90% sure that it's going to happen. See where I'm trying to go? I think we really want to be strong in our communication as to, in January, this is a definite. And if so, we would need a supermajority to come up with a possible tax increase to reduce the impact to our program. All along, we've been within the tax cut. Even last year, we kind of considered supermajority because we had some other things. And with that, feeling the pain for the next couple of years, knowing how that impacts taxes year after year after year, we then need to consider year 5, year 4, is there a way we can give it back? If we ask for supermajority this year, next year, year after, is there something we can do to give that back the following year? Meaning, we've maintained our program, we start getting incentive, we start getting money back. Now we start cutting the tax rate back. So I really think by January, trying to think about that type of a communication, and I'd like to see that go out to the community to see what the appetite is. That makes sense?
You talking like a newsletter that goes out to the.
Yeah, really, yeah. That's a great idea. Yeah.
This is where we're at, and.
Yes. Even, Jason, I know it's going to be tough to be specific, but try to be specific. And I understand what I'm saying. I understand the point. In a way, yeah. I mean, what's on the table?
I can't promise you that by January. I don't know.
Well, no, I know, but what would be on the table? When you're saying reductions, what are you thinking? Is it music? Is it art? Is it kindergarten? I'll never, like, how many years ago when this happened to us, what was that? When did the housing market hit? What was that, 28?
9.
We've been here, we've done that. And that's what we did then. We went out and we talked to the community. We said, you know, with Bob, and I remember sitting through those meetings, and that's where we ended up reducing the aides to 4 hours a day instead of 6. We came up with other alternatives, but we felt the pulse of the community going into that. We knew what we could do. So I'd like to, yeah, January's tough, Jason. I just kind of, let's use it as a milestone. I'm not, you know, throwing a dart at the dartboard right now. I'm trying to be realistic too. I want us to know ahead of time, a lot earlier than April or March. I'd like to know what the appetite would be. If it's February, sweet, but January would be better. What do you think? I can't read you through your mess there, Brian, so. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's really a Brian question. It's kind of like to us as a board, is that something
Right.
that we like,
Yeah.
you know, like to do or not?
Sure.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
I think what we don't know is we don't know the actual impact to the community in terms of those parents who lost a job or have been cut back or whatever, you know, and so the appetite might be measured for that kind of thing might have to be tempered with what was realistic for them to be able to swallow. So we don't know. We don't know what the status of our community is. I mean, we may have a sense from the students, but we don't know in general, I wouldn't think, how bad off some people are and who, you know, we know from our, if we have to provide meals and that kind of thing, but still, I don't know.
I hear what you're saying. I mean.
I mean,
on one hand, you're
you've got
asking
the
to go up, and
focus.
on the other hand, you know, people.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to know what our options are.
I hear you.
Yeah.
You have the focus groups, but we don't know where our community is.
Shelley.
Just to reference that 2008, when you talk about the losses, what in 2008, you talk about the losses and we're talking about losses coming. Are we in the same ballpark? Was it 20% at that point or?
Losing the kindergarten. Okay. There's an opportunity of losing the kindergarten program. We were going to reduce music. There wasn't a percentage at the time. Brian's doing a really nice job giving us percentage and giving us a feel. I don't remember, Mike. I don't remember a percentage. I remember a hard number. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that was everything. We had the gap, right?
Yeah, so
Patterson.
Yeah, so that, and we never got that money back.
No. So they would say you would increase your school aid, right? The state's going to increase your school aid, and oh, by the way, you had to give 25% of it back. So even though you're looking at a school aid increase, you weren't. You actually were losing money. So they played it a little differently back then. Go ahead.
Our enrollment was a lot higher too. So
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Brian's got the records.
yeah,
We can get that for you for sure.
yeah.
I got it as an action item.
But it's the same boat. It feels the same way. The same discussions took place.
Except that at that point, it was more how rich the district was and related to that, how not just a flat kind of thing.
But we were going to run out of money in 3 years. So by 2011, we're going to be broke.
Because that was all housing market tax, right?
Yep.
Now we're talking about the state income tax revenues that we're not getting, right? So it's,
That was the stock market.
It's the same kind of thing. Yeah.
That whole
Yeah.
struggle with mortgage. Yeah.
It's state aid. It's state aid revenue.
And I would just like to say from gap elimination to actual implementation, the crisis started in 2008, 2009, and schools didn't actually feel it until 10, 11. And that was because of the money that the federal government put in, which pushes the problem, solves the problem in the moment, and it pushes the problem up further. So it's counterintuitive to the community when they say, wait a minute, our economy's back. Why are we making cuts now? Why are we doing layoffs now? Why are we doing reductions now? It's because of that. And the stimulus would do the same kind of thing potentially. It fills those gaps. At some point, that money runs out though. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. And that's why the uncertainty here is so palatable, right? If it goes one way, it may not be an issue for this year. If it doesn't, though, it may be instantaneous. That is a little bit different. That is a difference of how this is being implemented. To their point, though, gap elimination never got the state aid back that we lost. And now we're back in it again.
Right.
State aid funding.
Just getting back to where you started when the cuts happened.
Right.
Let alone what the growth would have been, the trajectory of the growth of state aid.
2008 was like a $4 billion deficit.
Chuck, go ahead.
So just to try to wrap this around, we're looking at savings from the 1st of July. I'm assuming these are budgeted costs that we figured for this year, but we've been able to save that money, correct? Some of these positions, I assume you're going to want to fill at some point as need arises, but are some of these positions you're looking at potentially ones that we could hold off on to make up if we get to the point? I understand this is all early on, but you've done a good job so far. We have $460,000 of savings out of this budget already. At the worst case scenario, you're looking at $430,000 in budgets going forwards. What are these positions that you're looking at you think you could hold off from having to fill? What are the positions you think you're going to have to fill? And so we get an idea about where we're actually going to stand at the end of the day here.
Yeah, well, as mentioned, the positions there, again, we've spread out the workload. Eventually, I would tell you, I would like all those positions back. We recognize that the challenge is place the burden on the system. The more reduction we do, the greater that burden becomes. So we haven't filled, because if we do need to get into a situation where we're doing reductions and layoffs, we'd rather do it through attrition, through a change in position, than actually cutting an individual. So we recognize that there was an opportunity to look at potential savings there, so we moved forward with that. Moving forward, if we have to dig deeper, that's going to be a discussion. I'm not ready to kind of dive into that tonight.
Yeah.
My hope is, we take those reductions, we move forward with those reductions as long as possible. And the hard part is, remember, we're in school that is just not like school. And I have no idea right now what school is going to look like when we come out on the other side of this. There might be some changes at the state level. You remember, if you think back, the governor talked about, his reimagining task force for education. we know that education is about 26% of the state's budget. It's a high cost item. And so I don't know if there will be changes at the state level that will trickle down. I don't know if we will ever return to school the way it was. We hope we do, but we're anticipating that we might not. There might be some long-lasting changes that come out of this that are just unanticipated. So for now, it makes it a little easier to not fill some of those positions. For instance, an assistant principal. There is still a need. We have a lot of kids here still, and there is still stuff that goes on that's important. We've reorganized, as you know. Mr. Bennett holds up in the high school now and provides some additional building support. But at the end of the day, we would love to get back to that model and have an assistant principal and have Mr. Bennett focus on other responsibilities that I've taken on and some other folks, to share that burden. So it's really a hard question to answer, Chuck, just because there's so many unknowns, but the goal would be to not fill those as long as we can possibly not fill them unless the need arises and such, which we need it. And so, and if we get any other retirements, for instance, there's a retirement on the agenda tonight. We got to fill it. We got to fill that retirement. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get there. But due to the position and what we do in that position, we just have to fill it. But every time we get a resignation, we're going through that process. Do we need to fill it? And in some instances, we've got to hire more people, like the health, the monitor for the health office. Ms. Brewer cannot be in both places at once. That's a very busy office for her, even with half the kids being down there. We need some support in that office. So it's an unplanned expense, and we know we've had other unplanned expenses like PPE. I think that number was roughly around 150,000 the last time we presented that to the board. That would be PPE expenses, some other things, learning management systems, some software packages, things we've needed to try to kind of bring along through this system where, in net, we're probably looking at about a $300,000 savings at the moment, but that can change pretty quickly too. So I don't know if that answers your questions or
I can
not.
appreciate you can't. Yeah, sorry, I probably shouldn't have been looking for a firm committal on that. I just was wondering if that's like a potential roadmap to start mapping out where we're going to find the savings potentially to come from.
Yeah, and don't forget, I mentioned this already before. We laid that out to the board for about $700,000 worth of reductions in the budgeting process last year during pandemic time. When it first started up, when we first heard about the 3 budget waves potentially to come, we rolled out what that would be. We can reshare that with the board so you can kind of look at what potential options are to get at some of that. And again, that was with a plan to get at a 20% reduction of foundation aid, which we thought would be roughly right around $800,000 or so. That has since doubled because now that reduction has been talked about on all aid, even your expense-driven aid. So we have a roadmap that's helped us kind of start. We'll forward that, put that as an action item too. We'll forward that out to the board so that you can revisit that. I'm sure it's living in board docs somewhere right now, but we won't have you search it out. We'll resend it to you so that you can see what that list was. We did talk about that very specifically in terms of what we would need to do to acquire that savings. So what we've been able to do by not filling positions since then is on top of potentially that reduction if we have to enact those reductions and do that. So hopefully that'll help too, Chuck.
Can I just add one point of clarification? The 433,000 is the best case, not the worst case. 33 is if we have a burn rate of 33% of our reserves and our unappropriated fund balance in the last 3 years. That's the best case.
I have a question. So Brian, I know that's the best case of 433. Are you guys going to come to the next, maybe the working session or the workshop with kind of the proposal of potential cuts for program that you guys, administration, principals, teachers have kind of vetted as to what makes sense to kind of cut first, kind of what you do for the budget?
So we can revisit that list that we have already provided, which would be reductions for current year. That was already shared, the list I was just talking about with Chuck. If needed, you know, I will sit here and tell you, I am not ready to specifically tell you what goes and what doesn't go. But as Mr. Charsky has alluded to, back in 2008, we can talk about things that are mandated and not mandated. And that was the starting point we used back at the last recession. So you're going to hear things that are very controversial, right? Kindergarten is not a requirement for our program. We do it because we know it's good for kids. It's not a mandated piece. So if kindergarten's on the table, you know, that brings out a lot of concern for parents who want the best for kids. And we know kindergarten is, it's absolutely essential to get kids on the right foot. But we can start to share that information with the board on those things that are mandated parts of the program that we really can't cut, and those things that are non-mandated parts of the program that we can potentially take a look at, because there are some reductions that we can't do because they're mandates and requirements. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but I think it's a great place to start. And right now we haven't really been doing a lot of working sessions with faculty and staff on reductions. And I will tell you through my own experience, there's not a lot of eagerness and excitement to say this should go and that should go. And to some degree, you don't want to involve your employees in that decision because they're putting their colleagues and friends out of work. And they don't want to do that. And so from a union perspective, and I want to speak for our union, we've got a great relationship with them, but that's not something that is easy for folks to do. And so often we have to make some of those hard decisions, knowing what we know about the program. As much as we would love to engage individuals in that, it's really hard for our employees to sit and say, well, we should do this and not this, recognizing that it could put the person next door out of work. It's just not something we've done before. So engaging them and keeping them abreast of where we are and what the situation is like and the process we're using, and to make clear the things we are talking about, and then receiving feedback from them is very appropriate for our staff to be involved with. So we don't pretend to be the keepers of all knowledge, right? We know that we work in a group and we've got great minds that can give us some good suggestions, but I think we need to be cautious in doing that from an organizational perspective, asking teachers to make those types of recommendations. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but we will give you some more of that information for sure.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I also wanted to make a point that, you know, I'm in the unique place where I have a 4th, 5th, and a 6th grader at home, and it has been a challenge, and we've talked about that. I want to reinforce, and I'm glad to hear that the learning management system is coming out sooner rather than later, because, and I think it's kind of to the same point that we had over the summer and in the summer, we talked about in the summer, but from the spring, of the communication and where assignments are coming from, and the chaos of them coming from everywhere is still real and a struggle for parents as well as the kids. So I think that, you know, putting real emphasis on this learning management system and kind of encouraging them to use one place for communication. My 9-year-old doesn't know where to go. My 11-year-old is like, I didn't check my email. You know, it needs to be in one place. You know, if it's Google Classroom, if it's this LMS, it needs to be in one place, because as a parent, it's very frustrating.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
I can't wait. Thank you.
Mr. Heiser?
Let's see. I think what Mr. Charsky mentioned about the, you know, taking the temperature of the community once we get the information about where we think we are is obviously a good idea. It's something we've done in the past. But it sounds like we're not going to have that information really until, as you mentioned, January or so. So we'll just kind of see where we go. As I recall, Shelley, this is a different situation than we were in 2008. I think Dan mentioned it. You know, the shortfall then was $4 to $6 billion, and we're talking, you know, exponential larger than that. So this seems to me, this is a new thing. I don't remember being $2 million short. So this is a new thing. I saw, and I'm stealing Mr. Charsky's thunder. I looked at the census. There are 55 enrolled in kindergarten, which I think is probably low for some people saying, you know, I'm not going to do it this year. But I don't remember last year if we found a source that would give us a census, evaluation for the future. You can do that for 5, 8 years, and we did it when we were looking at the proposed merger with Ichabod. And I think the years then, and that was 10 years ago, those years took us out to right about now, and they were pretty accurate. But seeing 55 now and seeing how, if we average 60 per class for the next 10 years, that's 780 kids, I think. No, I guess that's 900. 13 times 60, no? 780. So that's 120 shy of where we are. I mean, that makes a difference. So if we don't have that information, and I know it can cost money to get it, I'm going to suggest maybe as an action item, we put it on for something to look at in the spring to, if it looks like, we're going to be, well, we should know for the next 5 to 8 years what the experts are telling us about where our population might be. It would be good to know if we're looking at a succession of 55s, 50, 60, just something to revisit. I don't want to lose track of that as we move forward. So maybe as an action item for early in the year or March or so, we can revisit that.
Put it in perspective, this is year 16 for me here in Skodak, and when I started, there was about 1250 enrollment wise.
Yeah,
we were at about 1200.
My son had 105, 110 in his class, so
it's a great suggestion.
I'm gonna go with Chili first because I was looking at one.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, that number stuck out to me as well, and I was curious if we may anticipate to see a jump in first grade enrollment next year. Are we seeing a gap year here, and it's a function of the pandemic, and then maybe our kindergarten class next year might be larger again? Do we have any sense that this 55 is just, low enrollment again? We're getting back to low enrollment, but or are we thinking we'll see a spike in first grade next year?
That's a good point.
No, mine's quick. I'm piggybacking on Mike. I think Robert's evaluation took us out to 2025, didn't it? So I mean, he was closer. At least he's got something. You know what I'm saying? I think. You don't think so? No, you don't think he went this? All right. Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a place to start. If he didn't, he didn't.
I believe we have it. So
Yeah.
Draw that up and send that out to us so we can take a look at it. Sure. Yes, Mary.
Population.
Could you say that again?
Part of that study was part of the aging of the population.
Okay.
And I don't think it anticipated an Amazon being our neighbor. So I
Sure.
don't know how much that's would even affect us. But even though it's not in our district, it's adjoining. But still, you would hope that we'd get some benefit from that. And the fact that people who leave our kids at my 3 boys don't, well, one lives in Troy, the other 2 don't live around here. Right. So they don't come back to Skodak for whatever reason because the grass is either greener or their opportunities are someplace else. So.
It's fair. Any comments? All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Let's move into the next 3 sections we have here. We got some work to do here. So, finance section 6A through F. We have a treasurer's report, claims auditor's report. The acknowledgement of a donation, which Mr. Derby spoke about earlier. We have 2 contracts, felt really. There's a pilot out there. Pilots, I'm sorry, 2 pilots out there. So do we have a motion to move section 6A through F?
Second.
Moved by Mary, second by Mike. Any discussion on 6A through F?
I have a question. I know we've talked about these pilot agreements before, and I think they're essentially forms that we've been assisted getting through the Rensselaer County thank you. Are these the first ones we've done, or we've done a couple before?
This is
I got you.
this is number 3 and number 4.
Okay.
We've done with the same format, school 50.
And the same percentage for us, 50%. Okay, that's all.
Any other discussion on 6A through F? Okay. All those in favor of moving 6A through F? Please say aye. Mr. Peter?
Aye.
Sorry.
Clicking, click out. Mrs. Gibson?
Aye.
Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mr. Arista?
Aye.
Mr. Graninetti? Mr. Hersey?
Aye.
Mr. Charsky?
Aye.
My vote is aye. Section 6B through F moves. All right, section 7, which is other action. We have our special ed recommendations. And then we have approval of a resolution declaring that the new hot water system installation is a type 2 action. It requires no further review. And we have a corrective action letter based on the audit that we had by Marvin Company last month. Do we have a motion to move section 7A through C?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Charsky. Do you have a second? Mr. Hersey, thank you. Is there any discussion on section 7A through C? All right, if there's no discussion, we'll move to vote. All those in favor say aye. Mr. Peter?
Aye.
Mrs. Palmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Gibson?
Aye.
Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mrs. Jurista?
Aye.
Mr. Graninetti?
Aye.
Mr. Hersey?
Aye.
Mr. Charsky?
Aye.
My vote is aye. Section 7A through C passes, is moved. Section 8, we have resignation appointments. We have 2 sections where we have A and B, appointment of staffing actions, and then the appointment of IT help and custodial help. Do we have a motion to move section 8AB?
Moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Charsky. Mr. Graninetti, are there any discussions on section 8A and B? If there are no discussions, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of moving 8A and B, say aye. Mr. Peter?
Aye.
Mrs. Palmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Gibson?
Aye.
Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mrs. Arista?
Aye.
Mr. Graninetti?
Aye.
Mr. Hersey?
Aye.
Mr. Charsky?
Aye.
And my vote is aye. Thank you. Section 8A and B passes. Mr. Chevier?
Just want to take an opportunity. You just approved retirement action. Rick Nussbaum is retiring from as the head mechanic from the bus garage. Rick has been, of course, in the bus garage for a little over 28 years. I had the opportunity to go over and wish him well in his next, the next part of his career, but just want to take an opportunity to thank him and recognize his many, many years of service for our school community, for doing such outstanding work on our buses. Our pass rate has always been extremely high, and that's the great work that Rick and the mechanics do, and our entire transportation department. So we wish Rick well in the next part of his next chapter for him. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that.
If I remember correctly, also, I think we should probably throw out there that he did give us plenty of time, right? give you, Brian, plenty of time to find a replacement?
To the operation, should be publicly recognize that he did that for us and purposefully made that decision to help the districts in this time.
Right. So it'd be nice to get some turnover. So, all right. Thank you for that. All right, this time we're going to go back into the final segment of public comment. So same process as earlier. If you were online, *3, you can put something in the chat to let me know. Checking 3 different boxes. Do you see anything, Mr. Chevrolet? I'm not seeing a notice. Anybody? Am I missing it? Oh, I have one. Hold on. Give me 1 second, Kendra, to find you. All right, Kendra, you're unmuted. Go ahead. I think. It says you're unmuted. Can you oh, she's muted again. Are you there? No. The program says you're unmuted. And you keep muting. Try again. All right, my apologies. We're having, it says you're unmuted, but we're not hearing you on this end. Anybody see anybody else? Okay, I'm looking in the chat. I'm looking in the Q&A. I'm not seeing.
Mike, what is it that people on the phone need to type in? Star what?
I think it's *3. It gives me the hand that lets me know that they would like to speak.
Okay, *3.
There we go. I got a caller right now that just put the hand up, so let me go ahead and get there. Okay, so the caller that it looks like 810. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Amy Hershoff. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Amy. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question is kind of for Jason, but James or Carrie might be able to answer as well. In the last 24 hours, the 4th through 6th grade teachers have been told on multiple occasions that there is an idea, there is something coming that is going to be changing for us and how we're going to be delivering our instruction to students. And I totally understand we're not at the time, we're not, at liberty to discuss what that plan is. I guess my question is, are teachers going to be part of developing this plan, or is this plan already in place and will just be communicated what we're going to be doing? I just am wondering if we're kind of part of the process or if that's already been figured out and we're just going to be notified. That's my question.
Yes, please. Thank you, Amy. I'm going to let Mr. Chevier take that.
Ms. Hirschoff, we certainly will be getting together with teachers. We actually are looking at a time early next week to get all of you together. I know there was some conversation that took place with you this week. I know I had an opportunity to connect with you yesterday. I think I mentioned in our conversation yesterday too that you're an important part of this process. We obviously need our faculty involved in decisions that'll be made. It's extremely important that we do that. We recognize that. We've been looking at a multitude of options, and we needed to have those options in place to be able to sit with our teachers and talk to them about what that potentially will look like. So I would expect something over the next couple of days to be prepared to be able to spend some time with your building principals and myself to talk about what some of those changes might look like.
Thank you. We appreciate the open communication, Jason, as always.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Are you there?
Nope, I'm here. Are you there?
Oh, yes, we're here. Go ahead.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening. I apologize. Technical difficulties here. My name is Kendra Severance, and I'm one of the many parents that has reached out to the district to express our disappointment with the fourth grade hybrid model for all of the reasons that were discussed earlier this evening. I am thrilled to hear that the district is committed to making a shift and improving the experience for all. I understand that the survey will go out next week, and then, Mr. Chevier, you said a lot would need to happen and there would be a domino effect. I guess I'm wondering, you then said the board workshop, when can the CES community expect to hear more? And when would any of these changes be scheduled to take place? Are you able to elaborate on any of that to give us realistic expectations about what might be next?
Okay.
Hi, Kendra. Thanks for the question. We appreciate it. What I need to be able to do, and I alluded to this earlier in the presentation, and you just heard Ms. Hirschoff ask a question about teacher engagement in the process. And so we need to work internally with staff on this. We need to make sure that we can execute it. Any of the changes that we do make and the dominoes that I'm talking about all fall into place. We have to make sure that each of those pieces of the puzzle, we can make those shifts and make sure we can execute this appropriately. So my goal isn't to drop anything on parents last minute. We've talked a lot about this. We have to do some internal work first. As soon as we know we can execute, even if we don't have every little logistical piece in detail, we certainly will engage parents, particularly at the 4, 5, 6 level, in some town hall style meetings to talk to you about what some of those changes will be, and we'll bring you along. I anticipate that would occur before November 5th, potentially, to talk about what some of those options are. And as we move forward, that's my next opportunity to present to the board what that plan potentially could look like. My hope is that within the next couple of weeks, we can have all of this ironed out and work with parents to effectively allow you the time to change schedules or do things that you might need to do as a result of some of the changes. So I understand the urgency. I understand the need and the desire to want this to be fixed immediately. But there are a lot of moving parts. I'm sure you can understand and appreciate that, and all the other folks that have concerns. So we understand the urgency. We will move as quickly as we can, and we will engage parents as early in the process as we are able to do so. So I greatly appreciate your patience and understanding, and I'm glad to hear that you're happy about the work to be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Mike's working. My name's Tim Ryan. I'm a teacher in the district for 34 years, also president of Teachers Union. So again, I'm just going to put it out there. We've been working with Jason weekly, sometimes more than once a week, to try to work through issues as they come up. And again, the year of 2020 is the year of issues. We've got a very good working relationship going. And again, you know, these issues for 4th through 6th are being addressed. They've been heard probably before even parents started making notice of it. You know, the staff will notice it also, and we're looking for other options. And again, Jason has come to us and say, hey, do we have any other great ideas out there? So everybody's putting their heads together on this, and I think we'll work through it. Unfortunately, education takes time for things to happen, and it's taking time. You know, it's 5 weeks in. You know, hopefully we'll get it worked out before the next 5 weeks. And, you know, we've got a lot of good people working in the district. You know, it's not a horrible thing, but it's not the best for the kids. And everybody understands that. And everybody's working extremely hard. There's not one teacher in the district that's not doing more than a full-time job at this point. And again, I feel like a first-year teacher going home exhausted every day. And again, I just got home in time to get on this board meeting from tennis. And I still have 3 hours of work to do grading papers. So, you know, I understand parents have other things. They've got kids at home that are looking for work to do. But you also have to understand those teachers are going for their 7 hours in a day with kids all day long. They're working the next 4 or 5 hours getting ready for the next day. And that's on their time, not on the school's time. And to say that, you know, they need to have other work for kids that aren't, they're trying the best they can. They really are. You know, and we understand. There's no easy solution. There's no one pill to take that makes it all go away. But again, we're going to try to look for the best opportunity to get everything going in a better direction. So, you know, I do want to, you know, I'll applaud Jason. I'll applaud James and Carrie at the elementary school. I'll applaud Jackie and Mike at the high school. Everybody's trying things, and, you know, there's always going to be some hiccups, but they've been working their way through it. And the best thing we can do is keep talking to each other and see if we can come up with something that works. So again, I just want the board to hear that this has been going on behind the scenes. There's lots of meetings that people aren't aware of, but things are getting taken care of and issues are being heard and trying to be resolved in the best way, really, for the kids. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Tim, for your comments. Okay, I think I don't know any other signs. So to the public, thank you for your comments, calling in. I do want to let you know this usually isn't a back and forth, but obviously there's some grave, you know, there's some concerns. So I felt it necessary that we answer some of those comments tonight. But normally it would be you make your comments and then we would take them under consideration and then discuss them. So just want to let everybody know it's not the normal process, but we appreciate your concerns and therefore we kind of, well, I went off track a little bit. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and close public comment this time. Action items. Jason, what do you got?
I have a list. I have a list today. I've got CDC guidance on Halloween and other holidays as a possible PSA. I've got Mr. Charsky's suggestion of information on supermajority, community appetite. We'll put that on there. I've got the amount, the dollar reduction during the last recession, Shelley's question on that, and getting some information on the last recession and financial information regarding that. Sherry's question, mandated, not mandated programs, possible reductions, what's required and not required. You can put something together for that. And then I've got birth rate enrollment report study.
That's the Roberts report.
It's the Roberts report, and also Mr. Heiser's comment on potentially exploring some options for having a study done that would give us a count for the future. So,
We miss anything? I'm sure. We miss any of the after actions there? I checked my boxes, so. Good, okay. All right, if there are no concerns, other comments from the board? And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.